Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Celeste Wong. I'm really excited to welcome you all to the Q&A for Before the Call. Really honored and excited that I can be in conversation today with the writer and director of Before the Call, James Choi. Welcome.
Thanks, Celeste. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for sharing your film with the SF Indie Fest audience. It's such a beautiful film. It really hit me. It really resonated with me when I first saw it. Was really moved by it. So can you tell us where you got this idea from and what inspired you to tell this story?
Sure. Yeah. So I was in 2024, I was on sabbatical. And so I had an opportunity to work on some stuff and get away. So decided to take my family and go to Korea because I had this script that I wanted to make. It was a feature film that it was part of a bunch of labs and had received some really positive feedback. So with this script in hand, I went to Korea. It's the first time back for me in 40 plus years. So it was a long time. And I went there to go make this film with, nothing set in place. I was just gonna figure it out once I got there. And then while I was there, that film ended up selling, or the script ended up selling. Was part of a Tubi Blacklist initiative, and ended up selling to them. So I sort of had to pivot, and I had about, I don't know, like 7 weeks left of my trip, of my 6 month trip in Korea. And so I sort of had met a lot of people during that time for that other film, which was about to go into production before it sold. And so I went to everybody and said, "Hey, would you guys be open to working on something new?" And they were down. So sort of jumped into this script. And this script came from sort of so many different things, but obviously during my time there, it was crazy to go back to my birthplace that I hadn't been forever. And so just being there in itself was such a deeply moving experience, aside from any stories or movies being made. Um, and it was just being there, it was like everything felt really familiar but unfamiliar at the same time. And it just started to, like, I started to sort of reflect on, as a Korean American, what it means to return, and then also what it means to belong. And I had to, they're one of the few countries that have mandatory military service. Um, and as I was, just throughout and I had to sort of go, hey, am I okay to go back? Am I gonna have to go serve right now? Because I'm still a Korean citizen. That had all passed, but I had sort of gone into some conversations with people about that. The lead actor, Andy, who is also Korean American, has been living in Korea for the past 2 years, from New York, and sort of going through the same question of, like, that was a rite of passage. It was a ritual that most males go through, and so if you don't serve, it sort of keeps you on the outside, right? You feel like you don't completely fully belong. And so that was an interesting question. Obviously, that tension became an essential part of the film. At the same time, 2024, we're in the thick of, like, a lot of, global conflict, right? The Gaza war was happening, the war in Ukraine was happening, and these questions of involvement and why people are involved was really stewing in my mind. Why do we go to war? Why would people choose to go to war if they don't want to, if they don't believe in what's happening? All those things kind of came into play. And so, I think all those things sort of came together. And ultimately, it was, that was lingering. I was thinking about that and then sort of going back home, and really thinking about sort of this idea of duty and belonging, sort of really sparked the sort of genesis for this story. And I think it's interesting because we're sort of at that state right now. There's this idea of belonging is such a big part of, like, where we are, currently, and sort of what kind of, just what that causes, right? I mean, when you start just sort of putting these sort of insecurities and wanting to belong so desperately that you'll do anything sort of plays into that, and social expectations and masculinity, all those things. So yeah.
Yeah, really nicely said. I think all that stuff comes through so in such a complex and really natural, relatable way in the film. And something you said about experiencing that time of while all of these sort of global conflicts are occurring and this really tumultuous time, which we're of course still in.
Yeah.
But I really liked the way you incorporated that into the film with the news always being on, whether it's in the background or reading the newspaper. It's just like this constant thing, even in the quieter moments. And I really love the balance of that with such a contemplative tone to the film. Can you talk about like creating that tone and these things that may seem like they're, that they would bump up against each other, and how you kind of held it all together?
Yeah, I mean, again, like a lot of this, if you think about the time frame, again, it was 7 weeks. So 7 weeks before sort of I was like, okay, this is something that's sort of speaking to me emotionally. To writing the script, um, casting, filming, all within 7 weeks. So, a lot of it was just based on sort of, it was a 35-page script, I think, of written material when it was said and done. And then obviously the shooting and sort of the things that came about extended that to this 61-minute feature. But I was just going in sort of with a lot of more of emotion than sort of plot. Um, a lot of the things in terms of the politics of things and where that was coming from and that influence and how it comes through sort of the background and the news. Um, Sort of came, I think, almost at a later time as I was thinking about it. So it always just what came first was sort of the human elements of just the emotional sort of feeling of what somebody coming back and sort of having to make a choice feels like. Um, and then sort of all those other things kind of came into play afterwards. And hopefully it works. I'm glad that I'm glad that it worked for you when you were watching it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And knowing the background of how it came together so in such a short amount of time is like really impressive and kind of incredible. I never would have guessed that. Um, to that point of the human element coming first, I'd love for you to tell us how you cast Andy Ko. His performance is so grounded and so moving. He's really great. So can you tell us about finding him, casting him, working with him? Was he originally in going to be part of the other project that you were talking about, and then it moved to this? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so really sort of serendipitous, all of it really in the way that it came. Again, I sort of went there with this. I've been in this sort of the last 16 years after moving back to Chicago. I've been really sort of um, focused on sort of creating the and in the sort of micro sort of budget model and space. Um, and so I went to Korea honestly with like no budget, like no financing. Um, didn't know anybody there. And sort of just had faith that I was gonna go there and sort of figure something out. And so when I first went there, I was just sort of like, very 2025, right? Just sort of utilizing social media and posting uh, in Facebook groups, Instagram groups, Reddit groups, of just saying like, "Hey, I'm looking for creative people who might want to collaborate on a film." Right? I'm an independent filmmaker from the States, and Jisoo, who's Andy's partner, uh, and I mentioned they both had moved there from New York 2 years ago, responded and was like, "Hey, my partner is doing a lot of social media content, but he is came here with the intention of trying to pursue a career in acting, and this sounds interesting. Would you be interested in meeting?" So I had met with him and her, uh, and uh, and sort of started talking about that initial project. And that casting process through that, it's a much bigger film, much more complicated. So through like once I met him and I was like saw his social media presence and what he was doing, I had a lot of material to see how he was on camera. And that helped tremendously for me to feel at least comfortable and confident that he could pull it off. So throughout that whole process with that other script, while we were casting, I was shooting scenes on my own. So that was part of the audition, was just doing short scenes that were in the film with other people that I was going to potentially cast and Andy. So I felt pretty good about where he was, and I felt confident that he was going to be able to do this. Um, and then all the other people sort of lined up. Sungkook, his friend at the pool hall, and Sohee, the girlfriend or the love interest, were both sort of. Chizu was a huge fan of Hong Sang-soo, and Sungkook has been in the past six Hong Sang-soo movies, I think. Um, and so he started coming into it, and ironically, they're partners as well. Sohee and Sanguk are partners in real life, and so um, I had sort of talked to Sung. She had reached out to him via social media and was like, "Hey, do you want to work on this movie, the first movie?" And I had met with him for coffee. We really connected, and when that fell through, I was like, "Hey, do you want to do this new movie I'm thinking about?" He was like, "Sure." And then I went to Busan International Film Festival, and he's like, "Hey, can I bring my girl? Like, we're gonna hang out." And he's like, "Can I bring my girlfriend to for our coffee?" I was like, "Of course." She brings him, tells me that she's an actress as well, and so of course, when I knew I needed a female lead, I was just like, "Hey, would she be interested?" And he's like, "Let me ask." And so that sort of all unfolded, and then the father was the only one that we sort of went outside, and that was through some filmmakers in Korea. And Kwang Rok has been, he's apparently a legend. I mean, he is a legend. I wasn't too deeply familiar with his work, the father, but he was in the opening scene. He's worked with Park Chan-wook a lot, and so it's just a real privilege and honor to have him be a part of that final cast. And but yeah, all of it happened very organically. There wasn't like a huge casting call. It was just more or less about meeting people, hearing their experiences, just connecting with them for the first sort of 3 months or 4 months I was there. And this became very sort of organic.
Hmm. That's so cool to hear. It's an amazing, amazing ensemble. They're all incredible, and I was really, really moved by a lot of those scenes. Even if they just had like one or two scenes, but those relationships felt so fleshed out because they're so rich in their history. Um, and yeah, I wonder if you can speak to, you've talked about the shortened timeline, so I imagine there wasn't a bunch of time for like rehearsals or anything like that, but did you talk through with the actors, what these big sort of like reunion scenes kind of held for them, and what was that collaborative process like in fleshing out those relationships?
Yeah, I mean, again, this and the most remarkable thing is this is Andy's feature debut, right? So he's never really acted in, I mean, I think, he messes around with like comedic shorts and stuff on his social, but um, for me, in terms of just actor-director relationships and actors in general, um, it's really about sort of really getting to the root of intention and understanding sort of the emotional state and the story, the presence of the story in the moment. Um, and then I sort of have to place a lot of faith that they're gonna, I'm not, micro detailed about um, what I want them to do necessarily, other than just understand and then give me what they believe emotionally. And the only thing I do work on is sort of more or less the blocking. And so there was just a lot of discussion, a lot of discussions and emails and meetings and hanging out uh, prior to and during. Um, to just go over, just flesh out like any questions they might have, like why I have a specific moment, why I have a specific line, um, and then sort of bouncing those ideas and talking through those with the actors. And I think that's really helpful and was really meaningful in sort of helping them really just get to the sort of the foundations of what where these characters are at. And I think throughout that process, we would meet for coffee or have dinner, and also is written in English and then had to be translated to Korean. And part of that translate, I can speak Korean fairly well, not amazing, but I can't write or read. And so a lot of that translation process was like sitting down with them as a group collectively and going over the lines and saying like, here's the intentions. How would that what would that look like in Korean? And so I think going through that and just that the sort of the intimacy of going through that and spending time together was super helpful in a condensed amount of time for them to really get into it, other than just receiving a script and being like, okay, I here's a story, this is what I have to perform, and then showing up and then rolling camera. So that was a real blessing, as much as it was challenging. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear about the translation because I love the use of language in the film too, like in the actual script, the switching back and forth. That felt really natural to me, and really compelling part of the characters and the relationship dynamics too. So it's cool that it existed, behind the scenes too.
Yeah. And Andy, like prior to him moving 2 years ago, like he said his Korean was awful. So, that was also just, I was like, oh man, how's this gonna come across? Like, am I reading the Korean wrong? But the response has been really positive, and his Korean just came across flawless. I mean, not only does he have to perform, but he also has to say these lines in Korean, which is not his native language. Um, so just amazing job on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to ask about the like visual style of the film too. It's so beautifully shot. I love the long takes and I love the way you captured the city. Can you speak a bit about what your intention was in sort of crafting the look of it and how you wanted to capture the city?
Sure. I mean, the city was so just again, just seeing Seoul and Korea through um through my lens, and my experience of not having been there, was just so amazing. And so like part of my time there was just soaking it in. I was just taking so much photography, while I was with my family and just seeing a lot of just exploring as much. And so when it came down to shoot, it was really easy for me to reflect back on all the places I've been, just trying to capture the sense and the feel of restaurants or the streets, the beautiful mountains that are surrounding Seoul. Um, so all of that came sort of naturally through the process again of being there and having that luxury of time. So that was really helpful in getting that out. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautifully done. Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to make sure I ask you about the title cards, or those sort of like chapters where we see the letters and the text of that on the title cards. It was so moving. They were written in a way that were just like really hit me. And I loved that idea of structuring the film. Was that idea there from the beginning? How did you come up with that, and what was your approach to those?
No, that was again. The movie is really. I mean, I guess some people would consider it simple, and just going back to your previous questions about sort of why that approach. I mean, everything is static. Obviously there's simple moves of pans and tilts, but um, a lot of that's like I feel like because of my sort of no budget, low budget sort of approach, it makes it easier for me to sort of approach my storytelling in that way because again, I could sort of focus on performance, framing, without having the distractions of a lot of moving parts. and I'm t influenced by tons of people like that come from Asia and Europe. And so um, the title card was again like when you do that and when you're silent, often you know a lot of the story or the emotions could get sort of it's not necessarily lost, but it definitely uh, could be a lot for the audience to sort of fill in a lot of the gaps. And I mean, this is all through the sort of editing process. I had talked to the film about or talked about the film with a really dear friend of mine, Alireza Khatami. He's an amazing, amazing Iranian filmmaker. Um, Things You Kill he had at Sundance last year, and it was Canada's official selection. Just brilliant, brilliant filmmaker. And we were talking about it, and he had um, actually just given me that suggestion about potentially using that style and that technique. And I just played around with it. And there was so much that I wanted to express emotionally that I was going through. Um, and as I was sort of like, I mean, I could go back to my journals and think about sort of what I was writing and what I was feeling. And it felt so naturally relevant and connected to sort of the base of this film. And so it was just it came later in the editing process. Actually, it wasn't in the original script, but just thought that that was really helpful, and I'm so glad that that resonated with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that, for being here for this conversation, and thank you for sharing your beautiful film with us. Congratulations, and yeah, hopefully we'll see more from you at SF Indie Fest for many years to come. But um, yeah, thank you, and thanks everyone at home for watching.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to screen there. Thanks, Les.
Bye.
Take care.